Yo, YouTube, what's up with your boy? Sports and Fitness Rants. I'm back, guys. Click that like button. Subscribe to my channel. What's up, y'all? Welcome back, guys. Welcome back. Got another great video for you guys today. As usual, you guys know the deal on this channel, man. We must continue to stand up, guys. Set the record straight. This is what we must continue to do. And in this video, we're going to do that. We're going to set the record straight, right? And we're going to stop the lies and the narratives as it pertains to the NBA players who played in the 40s and the 50s, guys. That's right. The pioneers. The guys who played in the 40s and the 50s, guys, these men were pioneers. And we're going to talk about what that really means in this video. And I want to thank you guys, man. Everyone across the world, everyone across the states, guys, has been supporting my channel. I'm truly humble, guys. Remember, man, these videos, it's all about standing up, stopping the lies, stopping the narratives, setting the record straight. We cannot allow them to rewrite the NBA's history and bend reality. We can't allow them to do this any longer. Right? We must continue to stand up, guys. And I want to thank you guys for standing up with me, man, for real. It means a lot. Truly humbling. Shout out to everybody in the membership, man, for real. And you guys know what to do. Turn the volume all the way up. Hit that play button. Remember, these videos are for educational purposes. And let's roll. So, yes, guys, like I said, man, in this video, we're going to speak about how the players from the 40s and the 50s were pioneers. They were pioneers, guys, because I think we've lost sight of what a pioneer really is and what it means to be a pioneer. When you hear guys like J.J. Redick and Gilbert Arenas, I mean, a lot of people, when you hear them speak about past eras, you know, these so-called fans, you know, of some of these players in this era, they love to tear down the past eras. And sometimes you'll hear them called plumbers and taxi cab drivers, things of this nature, right, to make it seem like these guys weren't really that skilled or that great. They weren't really basketball players. They worked other jobs. Right? So they're not really athletes. This is what they try to do, to tear these guys down. And I've told you guys in the past, these were real men, right? Who played basketball and, yes, worked side jobs because they were real men. They didn't cry and complain about playing a certain amount of games in the NBA and then having to go home and work a job to support themselves or support their families. Once again, these guys had humility. These guys carried themselves with honor, with respect, with integrity, something that's completely lost on today's era of basketball players. None of these guys have the heart, the grit, the intangibles, right? None of them, or most of them. I'm not going to say none of them, but most of them. And that's why we can't respect a lot of these players. We can't watch the game. It's not respectable. If you don't respect the players and how they play the game, how can you watch it? And when we talk about players from the 40s and the 50s, guys, right, the early years of the NBA, remember the first season in NBA's history was the 1946-47 season, I believe. So we're talking about a long time ago, guys. And those men who played in the 40s into the 50s, these men were pioneers, guys. So we must really understand what a pioneer is, right? Like I said, I feel like we've lost sight or the importance of what a pioneer is and what that means to be a pioneer. So I wrote down the definition of pioneer because I wanted to make sure I got it right. But when we think about a pioneer, like as a person, like the noun of a pioneer is to develop or be the first to use, right? So develop something, right? To be the first. That's literally what a pioneer is. Also, a pioneer is a person who is among the first to explore. So to develop or be the first to use, or a person who is among the first to explore. That's what a pioneer is, guys. That's what the players in the 40s and the 50s were. They were the first players to do this, right? There were no other NBA seasons. They weren't able to go watch film of guys in the 20s and the 30s play because there was no NBA. There was no league. These guys were the pioneers. There wasn't TVs back then. They couldn't watch highlights and learn from these other players. They were the ones who had to teach. They were the ones that everyone learned from. They were the first, right? So we've lost sight of this. When you hear people talk about Bob Cousy, right? And you hear them make fun of the way he dribbled in the video footage. Oh, look at the way these guys dribbled. They couldn't use their left hand. They dribbled with their hand like that, right? Their hand on top of the ball. And I've told you guys, there was a reason why they dribbled that way. The rules were called the right way. They actually officiated the game of basketball, right? And they held these guys to the letter of the law in the rule book. So that's why you would see Bob Cousy dribbling that way and these players dribbling that way. You had to dribble that way. You couldn't put your hand on the side of the ball, underneath the ball like these guys do now. They will call carry a palming violation every single time back in them days. These guys are pioneers. Who did Bob Cousy have to look forward to or look up to learn these things? Bob Cousy, the Houdini of the hardwood, was doing things out there that, once again, he did. He was the first to do. The definition says, develop or be the first to use. So, in essence, Bob Cousy's behind the back, the over-the-shoulder passes, all these things he was doing, he was a pioneer of this. He was the first one to do these things. He didn't watch video footage of other guys do it. He was the first. But all these years later, J.J. Redick would tell you Bob Cousy wasn't that good. He was a plumber, a taxi cab driver. These guys had no skills, none of this stuff. Once again, they lose the sight of the word and the meaning, or what it means to be a pioneer in something. These guys were the firsts. We think about a Joe Folks, who a lot of people don't know, Jumpin' Joe Folks, who was the first scoring champ in NBA's history, right? Joe Folks in the 1946-47 season led the BAA in scoring and actually led his team to a championship that first season of the existence of professional basketball. Jumpin' Joe Folks, a pioneer, the first scoring champ. Do you think he watched footage on people before him? No, he was the first. He was the first guy doing this. George Mikan, right? The first giant of the NBA's history, the first great player in NBA's history. George Mikan, I told you guys, the leader of the first dynasty in professional basketball. Won 5 titles in 6 seasons. But a lot of people believe it was Bill Russell. Bill Russell's dynasty was not the first dynasty. It was George Mikan's Minneapolis Lakers, guys. They won 5 titles in 6 seasons. 3 titles in a row, the first three-peat. No one brings up George Mikan, though. George Mikan was a pioneer, guys. You guys heard of the George Mikan drill? Go Google it. These guys are pioneers. Once again, George Mikan being the first dominant big man in the NBA's history for professional basketball. A pioneer. We think about a Vern Mickelson, who played alongside George Mikan, who won, I believe he won 4 of those titles with George Mikan, the power forward Vern Mickelson, the Hall of Famer. Once again, a pioneer. We think about a Neil Johnston. You guys know who Neil Johnston is. Once again, another pioneer and one of the all-time greats from the 50s. Neil Johnston. No one mentioned these guys' names. These are the pioneers, guys, of basketball's history. These are the guys that people tell us were plumbers and taxi cab drivers. These guys weren't that good. These guys were the first players to do it. These were the guys, man. Like I said, they had no one to look up to. Bob Pettit, the NBA's first MVP winner. A lot of people don't realize that, right? Bob Pettit was the NBA's first MVP winner. We think about Paul Arizin, who, once again, have I told you guys in the past, Paul Arizin missed 2 years of his prime career, 2 years in his prime, in the Marine Corps, fighting in the Korean War. But J.J. Redick will never tell you that. Gilbert Arenas will never tell you that. They'll just tell you these guys weren't that great athletes. They had no skills. They were slow and athletic white guys. They were plumbers, taxi cab drivers. This is what they want you to believe. These are the narratives and the lies, guys, that they spread about the pioneers of NBA's history. Bob Pettit, really, like I said, one of the first all-time greats. You had a George Mikan, then you had a Bob Pettit, then you had a Bill Russell, guys. So let's get Bob Pettit, the first MVP in the history of the game. How about a Tommy Heinsohn, right? Who I believe is inducted in the Hall of Fame as a player and a coach, played with Bill Russell on those Boston Celtics teams. Once again, another pioneer. Dolph Schayes, right? Dolph Schayes, who I believe played like 15 seasons, which at that time was crazy. Most players back in the 50s into the early 60s, these players only played maybe 10, 11 seasons. And before that, these guys only played 7, 8 seasons. Or George Mikan, or Vern Mickelson, some of these other guys, or Joe Folks, they only played 7, 8 seasons. That's the way it was back in them days. You didn't play into your 30s like that. But Dolph Schayes was one of the first players to play 15 seasons in the NBA, or 15 plus. I don't remember if he played 15 or 17 seasons, something like that. But man played a long time. Once again, a pioneer. No one talks about these guys, right? We all know about Bill Russell. How about Tom Gola, another early season 50s player? These guys are the pioneers, man. These are them. Tom Gola, who spent, I believe, time in the military also. I believe he was in the Army, Tom Gola. I think he missed a year of his career in the Army. So once again, guys, these are the pioneers. These guys, some of them are fighting in wars while they were playing their NBA careers, missing time in the NBA to fight in wars. These are the guys, man. They were pioneers. Remember what a pioneer is. To develop or be the first to use. They developed these things. They developed those moves, so to speak. The Bob Cousys, the Bob Pettits, the George Mikans, the Vern Mickelson, the Dolph Schayes, the Paul Arizins, right? The Tom Golas, the Neil Johnstons. These are the early season stars, guys. Bob Cousys, all these guys, man. right? We think about the NBA's first All-Star game in 1951 with Bob Cousy, Paul Lavis, and Dolph Schayes, George Mikan, Vern Mickelson. Like, these guys were all in there. It's just crazy, man, when you think about it. These guys don't get no credit, no respect, man. Everyone tears them down as if they were nobodies. These guys were literally the first people to be doing this stuff. The first players. Like I tell you guys, have you ever tried to play a sport for the first time when you have no concept of the sport? Think about it. These guys couldn't watch basketball on TV and learn from the other greats before them. They had to be the ones to show and lead the way. And what has come all these years later? Guys have taken pieces from each era and improved upon it. So every era is supposed to be a better representation of the era before it. But what's going on now is that we've gone downhill now. The curve was going up. Now the curve is going down. But they'll tell you that these guys were nobodies. I mean, for real, guys, think about it. If you had to learn a sport as a grown-up, let's say you're 22 years old and you never played a sport before, right? You couldn't watch it on TV, and then you were thrown out there to be a professional now. Think about this, guys. You're the first guys. You're the first pros. A lot of trial and error going out there, guys, in that 46, 47 season, all the way up into the 60s. So those guys in the late 40s into the 50s, guys, like I said, were legit pioneers, man. Put some respect on these guys' names, man. They were the first ones to do this stuff. The first, man. Remember, a person who was among the first to explore. They were the first to explore. Put some respect on these guys, man. Remember, the players in the 40s and the 50s, guys, were pioneers, man. Remember that. They earned their respect, man. These guys were great. You know the deal, man. I'll catch you guys on the next one.